Hello, everyone. My name is Rainer. I'm the CEO of Cladus.
Hi, I'm Anthony. I'm the CTO.
And we're going to be presenting our product. This is the first public presentation that we're doing, so quite excited to be here. A lot of hard work went into this. This product was really a lot of thinking about the changing world order and how there's confluences in development of technology, politics, and culture that are making networks more important in society today than ever before. So we'll move up to the next slide. So what is Cladus? Cladus is a tool that helps political consultants understand and influence their professional networks. So first and foremost, what is a network? A network, like a group, is a collection of people. However, it includes a specific set of connections between individuals in the group. So it's not just nodes or entities, it's also the relationships between them. And it's the specific pattern of these connections that are often more important than the individuals themselves for understanding the dynamics of a network. So what are some of the forces that are driving the increasing importance of networks in society? We believe that it's due to the transition from the industrial age to an information age economy. So in the industrial age, power was intrinsically linked to land. And so the control of territory meant the control of the means of production through extraction of raw materials, manufacturing them, refining them, and then distributing them into the economy. So this context favors large economies of scale. So groups that could muster large bureaucracies and hierarchies were able to outcompete others in political and economic contests. And these factors kind of built a very hierarchical, top-down, and structured society. But innovations over the last 100 years or so are kind of undermining some of those factors. So starting with the advent of information theory, this allowed for the conversion of knowledge into processable, computable data. And with that, engineers were able to make that scalable and affordable with things like the microprocessor and personal computing devices. From there, when these, computing systems were connected to the internet in the mid-1990s, entrepreneurs recognized that they could automate large sectors of the industrial economy that was previously often done by hand or was really dependent on physical locations and bureaus to manage, right? So this kind of information revolution created a whole new class of elites and societies, the tech elite, in essence, that are able to basically take these industrial processes, automate them. And in this context, because we're supercharged by technology with things like AI and other factors, what matters more in this context is the quality of the connections that you have, because to capitalize on opportunities today involves assembling teams from a wide variety of skill sets like engineering, design, finance, understanding political networks. So they're quite complex. And yet, because we're supercharged by the tools, we don't need as much scale. So in the industrial age, power and success was really contingent on control of territory and quantity, economies of scale and quantity of people you could amass into an organization. And we believe that in the information age, it's more about the network that you have, access to a high trust, incentive aligned network, and the quality of the people that are in it. So in this context, your network is your territory. Instead of us being so confined or restrained by the physical geography that we're in, it's really the network of connections that you have that make up the opportunities you have to traverse. But the question arises that if your network is your territory, how do you navigate in that network? How do you move? It's obviously more intuitive with the physical geography, but when we're seeing that this change to these relational dynamics, we need tools to kind of understand how to traverse this new territory. So in a professional context, you can start trying to map professional networks through CRM type tools, but CRMs are designed as a list of linear contacts, and networks are not a linear set of tabular data, kind of like an Excel spreadsheet. They're complex, they're interconnected, And so much of the focus is on the relationships themselves, not the people, right? As definitionally, as we described the network, it's about the relations. And so that's why we developed Cladus as a tool to more intuitively map networks. And by combining graph databases and AI, we're able to kind of give individuals or users in this context more holistic understanding of their network, and then run computation on that network to map aligned incentive structures, common goals, qualify potential partnership opportunities, and things of that nature that are becoming increasingly relevant in the information age. So the applicability of network analysis is prevalent in a variety of domains. You could think of B2B business or investor relations or investigative journalism. If you think of all the people that you need to keep on track of to build a story before it makes the news, right? But the two biggest factors that we think are driving this or are most relevant to network analysis are, do you have a highly complicated and interconnected system? Because if your workflow process is very linear, you don't really need a network to understand it. Networks shine when there's a lot of complexity and interconnections. So we're looking for high complexity and then also high stakes. We'll get into this a little bit later, but graph databases aren't the most intuitive in normal situations. So to work with them, you really need a high stakes environment where this does become a necessity to track all of the moving parts in the system. And lastly on that slide that's why we're focusing on political analysis for kind of driving the product development of our application initially. And how does it work at a general high level perspective? We start with LinkedIn data because LinkedIn has a great business schema for understanding networks. It's based around your work experience, your education. It maps things like skills, industries, and things of that nature. So that's a good foundational level for understanding who people are in a professional context in your network. But as really understanding kind of friend groups or network dynamics, that happens through one-on-one connections and kind of like the personal connections that you build with people over time. And so in a political context, analysts are already doing that by taking notes, but they're all spread out through, again, note apps, emails, spreadsheets. And so they can't really get a holistic understanding of their network. And so we're kind of trying to harmonize, like first to collect public data, so LinkedIn or X type data, and then you can enrich it with meeting notes, like from a Zoom call or transcript, and then a personal note-taking app. And we kind of have, let's say, the LinkedIn as the base, and then add the interconnections that people are talking about overlaid on top of that to kind of enrich the data. So with that, I'll pass the presentation baton over to Anthony, who will unpack some of the technical details of how this gets done.
Yeah, thanks, Rainer. So I'm going to go over some of our thoughts behind why we're using a graph to store this public and private data that Rainer just mentioned. The first big reason is that by storing data in a graph, we can understand these patterns, such as clusters of people, clusters of influence. Another thing is seeing how people who may be far apart socially could be connected through a series of warm introductions. And we can identify potentially good partnerships between people based on traits that they share, such as like goals or incentives. And that's possible because a graph is a great visualization tool. Humans are primarily visual, and we can just look at a graph and see how all these things are connected. But it's also useful to an AI because an AI can call its tools and like read the individual nodes and the edges or relationships between these nodes to understand the network dynamics. And another important piece that drove us creating this is that it's difficult to store data, in the real world. It's quite messy, and it doesn't always fit into these rows and columns of a CRM. There's a lot of ambiguity when, writing down information about a relationship, like should it go on one person or the other? And we're solving that by treating a relationship as a first-class concept, and we store it like directly on the relationship or edge in the graph. Right. That being said, anyone who's tried working with a graph knows that they kind of suck for some things. So firstly, they have a really steep learning curve. and you need to be kind of technical to use them. We can see that this monster of a query here. I mean, you need to be a query wizard to get anything out of this. And a lot of the political analysts that we've talked to kind of try to stay away from graphs, or they need to rely on data analysts to mine their results. The other issue with graphs is that they tend to be a little bit static. Analysts will import all of their data, create a graph, and they don't update it with new data about the world or their goals, or who they are. So we're trying to fix that by, updating the graph and creating a living knowledge graph. So we're solving a lot of those problems with AI, as you might have intuited. AI is really good at turning natural language into code, and so we can the user can ask questions in natural language, and the AI will write that big monster query that we just saw. And so it's just a great experience, and it can also summarize those insights for the user and also update the graph over time. And this all happens in a natural language interface, just like emailing a colleague or texting a friend. And so this slide might seem a little familiar. That's because all the things that AI is missing that we're all a little bit familiar with using AI are the things that a graph is good at. So AI really struggles with pattern recognition and understanding these unlikely results because they're created to predict the most likely next token. But by combining AI with a graph, we can give it these results, and it can actually find surprising insights in the graph. AI or LLMs are primarily text. They're just a text chat, and so they really lack like a visualization for the user. And so by combining with a graph, we can solve that. If you can go on. And so big picture, what we're doing is we're combining graphs and AI to create a network intelligence tool that can reason with you about your network and your goals and help you get warm introductions to people to further your goals in your network. So now we're going to jump into the demo, which I will drive here. Okay, so as you can see, we are in Cladus. We have kind of a familiar layout on the left, as well as this network screen. And you saw this on a previous slide, but this is where the AI and the user collaborate to store information about the network. And so I can click on one of these nodes here. This is actually Rainer's node. And so we can see, some of his experience. If we had filled in the skills and education, we would see like a lot of really rich information about him. We can see his colleagues, his personal connections, and we can also fill in notes about him. And this will eventually be filled in by the Zoom transcripts. But the most important feature that I want to show here is the chat on the right. And so I'll just paste in this example question here. So let's say I have this network and I had a call with my friend and he told me some information about him. So in this case, he started a new role and I want the AI to do that for me, to put it in the graph instead of me manually updating it. And you can see it's going to call some tools. First, it's looking for if he exists, and then it's going to create him. And then it's creating a few edges to show kind of where he is. It's even writing a note. So the goal is for this system to kind of autonomously create this data in the graph.
You can see Bob Smith was added and is connected to Phantom Labs and to me.
Yeah. And so another thing we can do that I mentioned earlier. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. So another thing that we can do that I mentioned earlier is finding like warm introduction paths to people. And so like this person, Amelia, who's over here, I as a human might be able to look at this because this network is kind of small. But if you had a very large network of say thousands of people or hundreds of people, you can't immediately tell that. And so the AI can actually explore your network for you and determine like a good path for you to get in contact with someone. It'll help you strategize about that. So it found Amelia Voss, first of all, and then it just immediately plots a path for us to get in contact with her. It's going to gather some additional information on the people along that path. to help you get warm introductions, and then it's giving me my strategy to get in touch with her. So it found this intermediate person, Randy, who co-founded Concord Systems with Amelia in this example. So that's a very strong relationship that would probably lead to me meeting Amelia if I wanted to. And then if I wanted to take this a step further, I could ask, what do I have in common with Amelia? If I wanted to maybe prepare for meeting with Randy and strategize about that. And so you can see it's reading more about Rainer, and it'll explore other parts of the network to understand that. It looks like it got stuck here a little bit. That's okay. So it's reading Horizon Giving, which Rainer worked at, and so it found this synergy between Amelia and I based on these common goals that we have that are recorded in the surrounding nodes.
Can you explore a little bit kind of the visualization system? And you notice that when Anthony starts querying, the non-relevant information becomes grayed out, and how it kind of crawls through the system?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I start out in a fresh chat, we can see everything clearly here. And if I just ask this question again, like I want to meet Emilia Voss, we can see that it visualizes for you what context the AI has. And so that's really useful. A common problem when working with AI is you juggle a lot of different chats and the context gets kind of messy. And so this helps you see that. And eventually we'll be adding features to like kind of control that and like lasso nodes. But it found this path, and so that's highlighted here.
There's that 3-tiered system in terms of visualization. You'll notice that some of them are slightly more visible than others. I can't speak to that technically, so.
Yeah, so the AI can have full knowledge of something, or a partial knowledge or no knowledge. And so right now, the current user, it has full knowledge of like Amelia and the connections along this path, because that's what it needs to have. But it also has a little bit of knowledge of their surrounding connections, to give it additional context on how to traverse this path. And so those are in this kind of less transparent styling here.
Wonderful. Do you want to go back to the presentation?
Sure. Yeah, and so we have a few things on the roadmap. The first one, which we just saw a little bit of, is we want to really have a fantastic visualization. This what you see here is this like kind of strategy game, essentially set in space. I like the strategy of this game, and I showed it to Rainer, and we kind of immediately fell in love with the visuals. And it's just perfect for the types of problems that we want to solve. And so big picture on the roadmap, we're going to be making more intuitive UI for processing and dealing with this information. And then Rainer will go over a couple other things on our roadmap real quick.
Yeah, you can turn the lights on. And the secondary part is that on top of the raw nodes and edges of the graph that you saw, another layer, another dimension of complexity that we can add is creating domain-specific ontologies. So this is a kind of a political ontology, just like a generic one that we created with AI, but it's kind of like an understanding of workflows or processes in a specific context. So let's say in business, you'd have a lead, then you qualify the lead, then you process, and you maybe try to understand the organization, the budget, the pain points. That's a kind of a business ontology of how a standard, let's say, sales process would go. In politics, which is the direction that we're taking with the product development, it's a little bit more complex and convoluted, right? But, what is the relationship between someone's reputation and their network, or their media coverage and the public opinion about them. So kind of the development roadmap for us will be honing in on a specific domain and then defining kind of like the information landscape and the key variables to look out for so that we can train the AI to really be that strategic network partner by understanding, okay, someone mentioned favorable coverage, or someone mentioned, important, the name of an important contact, which is known to have a good reputation in this domain. In that context, the AI can go from just like a basic, chat tool that's, helpful assistant as ChatGPT or Claude is, to really understanding the internal workings of a domain, in this case, politics. So that's kind of the direction that we're going in.
Yeah. And so.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all. That was the presentation. We are building network intelligence for the information age. Thank you for your time.
So you said that politicians they've used graph databases in the past. That's interesting. Is that pretty accurate? Like they actually have been using graph databases for a while and they found really clunky basically? Or?
Well, the problem with graphs is that because of that steep learning curve, there's a disconnect between political consultants and data analysts. So political consultants, if they define kind of, let's say, an important election or a specific contentious thing that's happening, they will hire a data analyst to construct maybe, when relevant, a network graph of all the key players and how those interact. But it's project-based, so it immediately becomes stale after this specific, intention. That graph is then thrown away and needs to be recreated as opposed to being persistent. And political consultants without a technical background, they can't access that insight. So there's just this barrier between the creator and the user, and that's why they're not really applied. So we hope to bridge that.
Now AI, it's the opening up graphs for this user connections.
Exactly.
Yeah. We're creating a bridge to this thing that was previously something that only really technical people could do.
Yeah. So it could write that big query about find me the closest path between this consultant and the politician, traversing.
That was going on. That query was you were converting that to AI language, and the AI was actually making the query for you.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Quick question. In terms of the example that you shared, seems to be something like you are pulling data from probably LinkedIn or social network like that one. Have you ever thought about, and especially thinking about politicians, that you could probably capture tweets or posts through some sentiment analysis for capturing the impression that certain person was about vision and do some acts?
Yeah, for sure. So LinkedIn is just really great. It's actually less relevant in a political context, because most politicians don't even have a LinkedIn, or it's very sparse. But nonetheless, the ontology, like the structure of LinkedIn data is great. So we would even if we don't have that directly, we'd fill it in from LinkedIn or using the data types. But yes, adding voting records or sentiment analysis, meeting recordings, let's say public appearance statements, et cetera, into the graph, and then what the AI can do, as you saw with the example, it can take this unstructured data, and let's say someone mentions a political figure, or they mention a policy or whatever, the AI will put that into the graph so that the AI, instead of having unstructured notes, it has like a very concrete data structure, and the ontology will help to define what's important and what's not.
Right.
Cloudflare did this really interesting. Cloudflare is a battle with Google right now, where basically Google is going and searching the entire web to basically bring them into their foundational models. And Cloudflare owns 29% of the internet, all goes through Cloudflare. And so Cloudflare told Google that they need to now pay the Google bots to train their models. But they found out that both search and RAG bots are still free. So it feels like you guys can go to RAG for free on setting out a bunch of bots mining the internet for free, basically. Networking.
Yeah. The goal is to pull in whatever data is relevant. So it could be from the user's graph or from anywhere on the internet, like Twitter.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I liked the feedback that we've had from some people that have explored AI generated graph ontologies, is they said you have to go vertical, because the relevant information is going to be so different. I think you can maybe better speak to the example of the senior vice president in one domain versus another.
Yeah. We spoke with this person, and they helped us think about that. There's a problem where, when you scrape data, you're looking at just the labels that people have on their job title, and so for example, like a senior vice president in like a smaller company is like very powerful and they're making all the decisions. But in like a really big, I don't know, like finance, like a big investment bank, like a senior vice president can't even buy lunch. So
So that's why
it's
you need the
difficult.
ontology, because you need it's more to go narrow and really focused on what actually matters in a specific context than go broad and try to scrape the whole internet and put it into our system. So if we have like a really defined focus on politics and probably a subset of politics, we will have an ontology that will, we won't need to go as wide. Instead, we'll pick up on the key, Pareto distribution of variables that really define whether a policy gets passed, a deal goes through, a connection gets made, and understand the semantic information around that.
So that would be very good for the vice president, finding a vice president and why and that. You need that network intelligence. But that's for a buyer, which makes a lot of sense in a company. But what is the equivalent inside of politics? Like, what's the equivalent of signal inside of politics?
We have some political people here who probably know much more about that than us. So that's kind of will be the next step is working with political consultants, data analysts, and really identifying some of those key factors.
Fine. I'm a little bit curious about the use case that you're identifying. Do you have a background in politics? Because there are so many other use cases as well that you would have picked up. But any specific idea why politics?
Yeah, so I worked in a B2B sales context for a little while, and then I had some exposure in a think tank that was exploring facilitating public-private partnerships between a tech company and potential political contacts. So that was a little entry into the world of politics, but I'm a young guy, so I don't have 20 years of experience in the political domain, but I do have an interest, and so there's a confluence between the structural factors of high complexity, high stakes with interest in that domain. So that's kind of the decision making.
Cool.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Are you strictly, does that mean you're not focusing on other areas?
We're open to all of those the examples that we brought up on this slide. We have an intuition that politics will be like a good area to focus on to start because it's high stakes and high complexity. But we've talked to some people in B2B sales that would find a tool like this useful. So it depends on who we're able to find product market fit with first.
And along with that question, I was asking mostly because I wanted to understand if it's more appropriate or if it works more efficiently or effectively if it's a larger net. If, for example, if we're a startup who's looking for funding, just entering the business world or doing everything, if they're small or is gonna it will. If this is something like this for me, for something like that, is it strictly more for or?
We're kind of oriented more on the smaller scale side. There's another company in the space called ULobby, and so they do like stakeholder relationship management, and they talk about how when you get to over 100 stakeholders, usually becomes pretty hard to keep track of who's who and how some of these influencers are changing or political factors are changing. And also because we're focusing on some of this more like personal semantic data, we're trying to kind of go deep rather than go wide. So in our context, we at this stage, we don't anticipate scraping 1 million, tweets off the internet and then doing large scale sentiment analysis, more so really understanding deeply specific domains so that we can generate value at even a smaller scale of network analysis.
So sorry.
Yeah.
What if you're like you say enterprise sales? You want to contact the company CEO, you sell some product B2B.
Mm-hmm.
How would it work?
That product. So we've had calls with SDRs, sales development representatives. I think is the acronym. And so they sit at kind of the top of the funnel, and then you have account executives who are once the lead is qualified, then it goes to the account executive level to really kind of close the deal. The tools on the outreach side are pretty developed. You have LinkedIn Sales Navigator, Zoom Info. You have a variety of these tools that can kind of map out, who people are, or, if they're on LinkedIn in a business context, that is there. In a business context, our role would be more suited towards account executives because things that we've heard from business people is that, the workflow for an SDR is quite simple. It's outreach, it's, qualifying the company beforehand, seeing if they're valid, and then passing that off to an account executive. But the role of an account executive is really, especially if it's a big sale, is understanding all the stakeholders in the company, who's the real decision maker, some people are called bar raisers. So they're there. They might even be an outside consultant that's going to really grill and be aggressive with the salesperson to like test any chinks in the armor. So it becomes this kind of like mapping of an organization focus for a closer, an account executive. And in a B2B context, we would be dealing with account executives or regional managers who have to manage like complex stakeholder networks in large enterprise sales. But for outreach directly, the tools are already robust enough. We don't need that, or we wouldn't be able to add additional value there at a high enough degree of impact.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I'm curious if you get a little more technical about what's interesting or hard or fun about making an AI LLM understand the graph.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all comes from like there's a lack of existing tools that can store network information, like information like this here. This is incredibly complex, and so it's just it's a lot of work to keep this updated, and so an AI can help automate like a lot of the data entry and also generate high level insights from the network.
One thing that we found, I think maybe to your point, is that, and why the emphasis on the ontologies is because if you try to create, and so Palantir is a company that we looked at. They're one of the only like business productized offerings that deal with ontologies, which is really that they recognized people don't need I said this in the presentation, you don't need another CRM or tool to dump data into. You need to understand how all your data is connected in this specific box of the domain that you're working in. So when we kind of started, we were like, oh, let's put this type of let's put like 20 relationship types, but then it becomes a kind of a pain to manage. And, you could think of nested relationship, like, business, manager, employee, and how it becomes this giant web of information. And so that's why going vertical is really important, because you need to narrowly define the scope of which relationship types are really going to have that impact and which are just kind of noise that complicate the system. So that's the ontology piece of finding the domain and then picking the top, 20, 100, 1,000 relationship types, I would say.
How you only look at cross-sectional data or even historic? Because you're talking about political domain, sentiments keep changing. So first amending a certain way, a certain duration, and it changes. So are you looking at that?
Yeah, I think a big part of this will involve data health. So like, how old is the data that's coming into our system? Some information is not really contingent on data health. So for example, where you went to school, that's not going to change. And so we don't need to monitor that closely. But sentiment or whatever, like people do change their minds. People do, go from left to right or right to left, whatever. And so we would be conscious of when we're ingesting data, how time sensitive is it? And when does it basically cease to exist as like something to be considered as legitimate data? So
There's some trigger.
totally, yeah.
A large part of the system will likely be like monitoring public sources, like blog posts or social media posts or things like that, and updating the knowledge we have to match like what's currently true.
Cool.
Oh, without a technical explanation, how would a politician benefit from using the platform, and like what can he get out of it that'll improve his work or help him make more money? This.
Should I take it?
Sure.
Yeah, so some of the key things, and we're still in like a product development stage, so this will evolve. But some of the things so for example, I've noticed, without naming names, I'll tell you in the form of a story, spoke with two politicians and mentioned they kind of knew each other. They were former colleagues. And I mentioned, oh, this person was really helpful in our call. And the other one said that, I'm glad that they were helpful in your call because they weren't helpful at all when I worked with them. So it's things like that are expressed in private calls that really shape an understanding of actually how a coalition or a network works. And that's not online, right? So if you're working with a team or coordinating amongst a group of people, understanding like or dislike, personal compatibility, shared incentives, where people are getting their money from, are there conflicting, conflicts of interests? And so when you map that, then you can kind of graph as the Stellaris, do you want to go to the
Sure.
clustering? This will be ontology defined, but then you could start to see where are there pockets or clusters of alignment, of potential, synergistic work opportunities. And the AI would be able to tell you that, okay, maybe you're 2 hops away from this contact that's relevant to you. And you can take another path that's maybe 3 hops, but the connections and the similarities that you share with the people in this path are actually much more aligned, and you're probably going to run into more roadblocks going this way. So it could help you kind of strategize about how to do outreach, or how to even plan your business strategy based on key stakeholders in your network and the incentives and the alignment that you have with those people.
That goes into my question, which is about inference. It's so interesting that inference is the big word they use to talk about foundational labs and how it goes out and does the token in real time. Yes, the tokens in real time. But it's also used in another term, which is you can infer A plus B equals C. And that's what LLMs are really good at, right? You can take a whole bunch of data. How are you guys thinking about whether this system can basically infer data that no one else is finding?
Yeah,
That's homopoly, right?
yeah, I guess a little bit. Where my mind goes to there is when setting up our ontology, as Rainer mentioned, we can have someone who's I don't know, like a leader, and we can infer information about people based on the relationships that they have to their surrounding data. So in the example where I mentioned, where we don't really know what senior vice president means, we would have probably a set of rigid rules that tell us okay, if this person, if 5 people report to this person, they probably have a little bit of power, and that type of idea. So looking at the surrounding, information around a person.
I just want to add to that is one of the slides that we had in the presentation, which we cut out just for streamlining, but I'm glad you brought it up because it gives me the ability to pontificate more, is the homophily principle. So that's kind of what's behind inference, like inductive reasoning in graphs, is the idea that a node with similar tags to another node will be more likely to be connected to it. So you don't need a comprehensive picture of a network, because if you like horse riding and maybe there's these associated kind of terms of liking the outdoors or living in a certain area or whatever. If there's associated variables to you and another person, we have a higher probability chance of making an inference that maybe this other person that you don't know with similar alternative traits also likes horse riding or some other kind of whatever variable that we're tracking. So homophily and that concept of if I don't know Anthony's friend but I know Anthony, I'm more likely to know that I'm more likely to like that person than a random stranger, because they probably share traits that I value in my friendship with Anthony. So that's how you can make these inductive inferences.
Infer to make good connections based on things people like to do.
Yes.
Exactly.
So in my previous experience, I've worked with graph database on very long back product recommendations. So multiple people buying the same product, so you have a group of people, so you can profile them. So my question is, so my experience has been, if it's 100 products, that's very good to look at. You can even load on the big screen and look at it very well. But it goes to millions of products, no way you can do that. So that means your interface comes back into the picture. When I was working, there was no chat. So everything was in a tabular format. The input was still in a graph, but the output was still back to the tables and everything. So in your experience, how do you see it? So now the chat is the new interface. So do you see the middle column of your interface still be around there? Or it will go ahead and it's only the chat that will get preserved?
Yeah, I mean, so we think that both could be useful. So the chat will be great for asking these high level questions, and then yeah. As you mentioned, with like a million data points, it's not really useful to have something like this. So we're currently working on like an interface where you can like zoom into a section and see like more detail as you zoom in. Does that answer your question?
It would basically be node bundling or relationship bundling. So let's say like the relationships that I have with Stuart, for example, would be like friends with, we let's say play football together. We go to AI Whispers together. So there's maybe like 5 lines connecting us, and this is where the ontology comes in. We could bundle that, 120 whatever characteristics into one kind of dominant one. So friends with, which includes or has a complicated relationship with, is subsumed under parent-child. You know what I mean? So the most salient points are brought to the fore by the presentation, depending on the scale, and everything else is kind of pushed underneath, or kind of like in a map. Like if you're on Google Maps and you see like a lot of data points, and then you zoom out, they kind of fall into one pin. So at the level of scale that you're looking at, the most salient data will be presented to you. And it would be lazy loaded in as you zoom or zoom out.
So based on your talk with these prospective users, which one has excited them more, the chat portion or the graph portion?
I would say the visualization.
The visual. A lot of people really like the visual. So and that's one of the reasons we're initially focusing on like smaller networks, because we think this is really powerful and people like it.
Yeah. So, we've heard that like for political consultants, they know intimately the names of people that they might be working with, but they've never actually seen them all. Or they might always be in an Excel spreadsheet or whatever. So be able to actually visualize how people are connected and then talk with that's a really like an eye-opening, or it's a new experience for people.
Yeah, the reason I asked is because this graph database has been around for 10 years. So why it didn't work then and why it worked? Because chat is definitely interesting to me. The way you can structure a node into the graphs, because I couldn't do that previously. And now I can talk to it. But the graph database, the visualization has been there for quite some time. So what is it that it will excite them now and not 5 years ago?
It is this.
The graph rack.
It's the AI that steps in to make it easy to work with, dynamic. You can talk in natural language if we have this responsive visualization. So it's really the AI plus the graph, because the graph alone, as you said, it's static and it's hard to work with. Like you have to be writing stuff like this if you want to change what's on your screen.
Yeah. And
Can I ask? Sorry, I don't know if it's a bother to the audience, but you both seem to have quite a knowledge of graph databases. Can I ask what you do?
Yeah. Work on new for 10 years.
Oh, okay, very cool. That's a graph system.
we're using Orango.
Cool.
Cool.
Well, unless there's any.
You said that you wanted to enrich the data in the app with the user's own data, correct? So it sounds like integrations are going to be very important.
Yes.
This platform. Are you guys familiar with any particular tools that are popular in the sphere of politics, like how Notion is widely used in a lot of business contexts? Are there any particular tools that are important? It would have to be very much.
There was, besides uLobby was one of them. That's one of the first. Was there any others that we came up with?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different like CRM type tools for different contexts. So just integrating with a CRM like system is going to be very important. uLobby is definitely big. Affinity is a big one for like venture capital. It just depends on like which niche we initially focus on, and we have a big list of like the tools for each niche.
But there are a lot more tools, and that's also kind of factoring into our business calculations. There's a lot more tooling for the business space than the political space. There's just not a lot of tooling there, and a lot of political people are using quite antiquated technologies. So that's also been another reason why Palantir has gotten a lot of contracts, is because there's a lot of compliance and regulation, especially with direct government contractors. So they're one of the people that are using ontologies and graph databases in a political context. But outside of that, the parent term for this political mapping is called stakeholder relationship management. So SRM instead of CRM. And it's just kind of, it has a broader context. Instead of treating everyone like potential clients, there's maybe a few different parent category types, like, business interest or political lobbyist or whatever. It's a little bit more broad, but yeah, it's significantly less developed than the CRM space. Cool. Oh,
Yeah.
this question.
You talked a lot about the insights to analysis. How do you actually make the data you pull out from this actionable? So, for instance, when it comes to the political sphere, you want to have influence, you want to maybe write legislation, or maybe win an election. How are you actually using this data and integrating their systems to make the actions, actionable from what you action out into the system?
I think we're really at a quite an early stage to be able to tell like the exact type of thing, but in a broader context, it's understanding who people are, where their incentives are aligned, what are their core objectives, and understanding how to navigate a network without basically like stepping on toes or basically activating some kind of antagonism that's unnecessary. So it'd be more as a communications tool. Drafting emails, planning strategy, and a big part of it is having this persistent memory, so that instead of dropping kind of context about your network into ChatGPT or whatever else, you have this persistent understanding of your network, so you can kind of more quickly strategize about, okay, if I'm going to do an outreach, what would be the implications of that, and who's kind of involved. So it's more like mapping, incentive alignment, and then kind of understanding how to plan strategically. But I would like to get a better answer to that question, in terms of like if it could help plan campaign strategy or some more kind of. I think a later goal would be it being, if you have sufficient data to actually build like reports, like detailed reports, a diagnostic of, how would you approach a campaign, or how should you deal with a company, who are the key stakeholders involved, and then kind of create a really robust reporting system. So that's kind of the direction, but in all honesty, we have to get more interviews with political consultants to understand how we could best serve their needs.
Yeah, and a key deliverable that we've considered is like for example, like a lobbyist or someone that needs to like influence a political figure. They would have a meeting set up, and so we could help them like map that person, their surrounding network, like anything they've put online that might be relevant to this conversation. So you can like really deeply understand the people you're trying to influence.
Cool. Okay, guys. Well, if there's no other questions, it's been a pleasure presenting and showing. For me personally, the showing like how Anthony created crawling through the network and the context that it has as it grows, that was so beautiful for me to be able to really narrow down all the things that are not relevant. And so, yeah, I'm just grateful for his coding effort, and it's been wonderful working through this product development cycle. So thank you all for coming.